What's up, everybody? Welcome to S.W.A.T MMA. We're smoking weed and talking mixed martial arts. My name is Jarrod. I'm here with Paul.
What up?
We are coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada, fight capital of the world. This is episode 95, and today we're going to be taking a look back at the exciting BKFC 16 card, as well as the UFC's Brunson versus Holland. Then we're going to take a look ahead to the UFC 260 Heavyweight Championship bout between Francis Ngannou and World Heavyweight Champ Stipe Miocic. We're also going to discuss the latest announced MMA fights and a bit more. Before we get started with all that combat action, let's dive into our weed of the week.
Smoke weed every day.
All right, everybody. This week we are smoking on two different kinds of flower as well as one concentrate. Paul, what kind of concentrate you got over there in your Aerial Pro pen?
Oh, gosh. We got some watermelon Skittles here.
Sounds the way it is with a lot of these vape pens. I find it to be that's probably exactly what the strain cross is, right?
Yep.
Watermelon
and Skittles.
crossed with Skittles.
Yep.
Indica hybrid, right?
Indica hybrid, yeah. It's got a real smooth taste, I feel like. It's obviously watermelon Skittles. It's obviously got a little fruitiness added to it, but I don't feel like it's a lot of those, like, other, like, not to say cheap, but you know what I'm saying, like the other brands that kind of, it seems like they add, like flavoring in, whereas, like, obviously there's flavor to add to it, but I feel like it's a lot more the live resin with a little bit less of the terpenes.
I like this brand, this Aero Pro.
Yeah, they're legit.
The only thing I like and actually don't like at the same time is the fact that they have a unique battery that you can only use for their cartridges. They're not interchangeable with anything else. But they're kind of cool because they click in with a magnet and the pen vibrates when you inhale, which is
well, that's another good thing too. Is it's kind of hard for motherfuckers to fake bullshit. Obviously, I never buy pens off the street to begin with, but I'm just saying, like, we've had our horror stories in the past, and not ours.
That's one thing you should never do, folks, is buy vape pen THC products on the street. Buying street weed is one thing.
Yeah, but
who knows what they're putting in cartridges. Yeah. Like, remember when they were doing that vitamin E scare for a while?
Yeah.
There are people who are using that as a mixer.
It was more
on
like the East Coast, but, like, yeah, I see what you said.
Yeah, because you heat vitamin E up, and it's, like, fatal.
Fucking, hurt you. Fucking make you collapse, have collapsed lungs and shit.
Well, let's bounce over to the flower. We got some Mac 1 today, and we have some duct tape. Mac 1 is an interesting strain because it's pretty selective about who's allowed to grow it. You actually have to have permission from the grower and be like registered with them in order to grow it, in order to keep the strain's integrity and awesomeness. Really, really trichome heavy buds. We got it's Alien Cookies crossed with Miracle 15.
We were talking about a little bit about this earlier, but, like, I feel like a lot of these strains always come down to a lot of our favorite strains always come down to Girl Scout cookies or, like, in Gorilla Glue.
Yeah, because you can guess what the lineage of Alien Cookies is going to have. Is, of course, one of its parents is Girl Scout Cookies, and then Alien Dog is the other. And then Miracle 15 is an unknown.
That's flavorful.
It is. It's nice. Huh? I like it.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually.
I like the Mac 1. It was really, really heavy trichomes. The bud was, like, white and super, super hard nugs.
Okay.
And the duct tape that we have is also, it's the same thing that you were just saying. It's GG4 crossed with Do-Si-Do.
Do-Si-Do was smoking last week.
Right, and GG4, like, pretty much all of last year was one of our mainstay strains, as we have a really good source on some just top-shelf Gorilla Glue.
Yeah.
So, whatever you're smoking on, folks, fire it up, and we hope it's tasty as what we got here. We're starting with this Mac 1. Let's puff this down, and let's dive into some combat sports action, bro. What do you want to start with today?
Shit. I guess we'll go ahead and start with what happened last weekend.
With the UFC? Let's do UFC first, and then discuss BKFC, because those were the two main events. There was some boxing that happened, but I mean, it was what it was.
Pretty fairly one-sided.
Right.
Well, it was the WBO, and I believe it was the WBC light heavyweight champion.
Yeah. It was Beterbov,
Beterbev,
whatever. He made short work.
Got that 10 round.
Well, it was 10th round TKO, but he could have closed that out a lot sooner.
Well, he knocked him
I
down in
think.
the second round. So.
Right. He played it pretty safe, which you can't blame him for. But BKFC for me was the clear winner over this weekend as far as entertainment value. And we'll save that for second. We'll start with the UFC, which to me it's kind of a disappointing card.
I liked it.
It had some decent fights, but
I liked it better, at least on the announce table.
well, what did you the announcers?
Yeah, I like them better than DC. I like Bisping and Felder better for sure.
They're better than DC, but let's talk about that for just a second since you mentioned it. Like, well, let me hit this weed. The announcers, like, because you watched the boxing, and I know you didn't get to see the BKFC card live with me. Let me hit this.
Yeah.
But the announcing for me was a real standout because I've been a big complainer about the UFC announcing style.
Yeah.
And it was really highlighted. If you tuned in the BKFC 16 card, you had Chris Lytle, and I can't remember the other guy's name. I know he's a former boxing referee. His name escapes me. I apologize. But they did an excellent job. And you know what they talked about? They talked about what was happening in front of them during the fight, and they explained it a bit to viewers, and they relayed the action back. So you knew it was more than just two guys swinging wild fists. They were talking about the footwork. They were talking about the punch selection that they were throwing. They were talking about movement, all kinds of things that were happening in front of them.
Yeah.
There were no contrasted with, and the same thing with the boxing card. They talked about what was happening in front of them.
Yeah.
That was one guy, unfortunately, because that was a Russia broadcast card.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're watching in English on ESPN Plus, then you got one single
Andre
commentator.
Ward and,
I never heard anybody else. Was there two?
Yeah, there was Ward and.
I only watched the Beaterball fight. I didn't watch any of the undercard.
Yeah,
and I tuned in like right at that knockdown.
I think it was one guy until the main event where they added Andre Ward.
Well, it was focused on what was happening in front of them. Because, that's where these announcers come from, is back in the day when boxing used to be broadcast over the radio and you had to describe to people what the fuck was happening.
Yeah.
Right, to people who couldn't see it. In the UFC, for me, I don't like there's so much story time and anecdotes and funny this and their fight description boils down to, he threw a right hand, now he's going for a level change. And then they'll say things like, he's going for a Kimura. Oh, now he's trying a leg lock. But they don't say what any of that is, which to me and you is not a big deal.
Yeah,
but imagine the new viewer, okay? Yeah. They're coming in, they're like, well, what's a leg lock? I don't know. Yeah. What's a Kimura? I don't know. What's any of that? They don't. And they have plenty of time to explain it, but instead we get some amusing anecdote from somebody about one of the fighters or some shit at the gym or how Michael Bisping took that same kick and it hurt for fucking 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Or DC talk about how the dude trains at his gym, which maybe some people like that. I don't know. But for me,
I feel like you need to find a healthy mix of the both.
Well, let's get started then with last week's UFC event where we had the main event between Derrick Brunson and Kevin Holland, and then we'll go from there. I got to say, overall, bro, I was a little bit disappointed in the card. What did you think of it?
I thought it had good moments, but I didn't see as much as the undercard because the NCAA Wrestling Championships are on. But the main card, I mean, it was a lot of knockouts. I didn't mind it.
What did you think of the main event? Let's start there, because that's what everybody's talking about. And for those listening that didn't see it, you had Derrick Brunson and Kevin Holland at 185 pounds, and Brunson winds up winning a 5-round decision, basically on his wrestling. Yeah. I think that the fight was, when it was stand-up, wouldn't you say Kevin Holland had a clear advantage of the stand-up?
Well, he knocked him down in the second round. And I thought, I feel like the main problem you ran into here with Kevin Holland is his style is, there's good and there's bad. Him being so wild and him having so much power, when he's able to connect and really rock someone, he's automatically going to rush in and try to finish the fight. But ultimately, I feel like that was kind of his downfall in this fight, because every time he was able to land good strikes and able to, get Derrick Brunson on his back foot, it was more he was leaving him his hips and leaving his legs open for the takedown, and Brunson was able to take him down in every single round.
I think that, excuse me, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And to elaborate on that point a little bit more, I like Kevin Holland's unique striking.
Yeah.
His footwork needs help.
Yeah.
His post and pre-strike footwork, he needs to be able, when he misses, to be able to pivot, to either come back, pivot out of the way. He kind of was, like you said, he's leaving himself open with a miss, and then Brunson was just hitting him with a takedown.
Yeah.
And then on the ground, there wasn't really, a lot he could
that's
do.
the thing, is if you look at the numbers for the fight, Holland ends up hitting Derrick Brunson with more strikes than Brunson hit him with the whole fight. It was just 15 minutes of ground control.
Yeah, he was on top of him the majority of the time. He just couldn't stop that takedown.
Yeah.
But I had thought if he only could have stopped the takedowns, I think he would have knocked Brunson out, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, Brunson looked really wobbled there on some nice striking.
And here's the thing. I didn't understand him taking Brunson down in the 5th either.
No, me neither.
That
was a little bit odd, but he wanted to be, because Brunson's never been taken down in the UFC.
Yeah, I get that.
And he said he wanted to, and I get it. Now, I mentioned controversy, and the controversy is coming from the fact that Kevin Holland talked a lot during this fight, and it happened in the UFC's, quarantine bubbles thing still.
Yeah,
so we could all hear it.
Same thing happened when he fought Thiago Santos in his first fight in the UFC.
That's what he does. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's controversial. Dana White is doing what Dana White does, which is shit on people that he promotes.
Yeah.
And he's saying that
he had a mental breakdown.
He had a mental breakdown because he was talking to Khabib, who was sitting at the table with Dana during the fight. He was talking to Brunson. He was talking to his corner. Look, that's how the kid fights. That's what helps him stay loose.
Yep.
And kind of have a good time. This isn't a street fight. It's not based on anger and emotion. And if that's what he needs to do to stay loose, I don't have a problem with it.
And I don't think he had a mental breakdown. I think he just had a game. Derrick Brunson executed a game plan that he knew he had the advantage in. Everybody knew Derrick Brunson was an All-American wrestler, and everyone knew that Kevin in the past has had trouble coming off his back.
Right. There was no surprise there.
Yeah.
So I don't see the controversy.
I don't get the huge criticism from Dana. It's like, that shit just doesn't make much sense to me, because it's like, how do you criticize him that way? How do you criticize in that way when at the end of the day that's just who the kid is? He didn't have a mental breakdown. He just lost because Derrick Brunson had a better game plan, and that's just it. Like, there's no more to it.
You know what would have happened if, let's say, Kevin Holland's mouth had been shut during the whole fight?
Yeah.
Dana White would still be shitting on a fighter. He would just be
like,
saying Derrick Brunson's boring.
Brunson,
all he does is take people down.
Well, not only that, he would have been like, oh, see what happens when Kevin Holland deals with adversity, he shuts up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
He's still talking. He doesn't give a fuck.
It's a bizarre phenomenon we like noting here on the show.
Well, and some other news after the fight as well as Kevin Holland in the post-fight press conference said that he is planning on hiring a nutritionist and moving to 170 pounds.
I don't think that's a terrible idea. If you look at their muscular comparison between Brunson and Holland,
and Holland
just their
came
arm
in
size alone.
And he weighed in at 183. No one purposely weighs in 2 pounds underweight.
No, that would indicate that he didn't even cut weight.
Yeah.
Or if he did, it was.
Or if he did, it was very small.
He had to cut 4 or 5 pounds and just wound up
4 or 5 pounds,
extra,
woke up 2 pounds less than what he was, just based off drifting in the morning.
Exactly. So
you know what I mean?
I don't mind him at 170, but the problem there is I bet we're thinking the same. What do you think the problem at 170 is?
The only problem I see with 170 is you just got held down by a wrestler for 5 rounds, and 170 is wrestlers,
That's what it feels. It's
all the way through.
I mean, what's Colby going to do to him? What's Usman going to do to him?
I think the equalizer, though, after I've thought about it a little bit, I think the equalizer is his power and his length. Because one thing, Kevin Holland does have great jiu-jitsu. He's a brown belt under Travis Lutter, which is...
Yeah, he had a couple submission attempts here against Brunson. I mean, he got him in a triangle. He tried an arm bar.
Yeah.
A couple things.
Tried a few Kimuras.
Yeah.
Didn't really work out. But here's the thing. That's kind of the equalizer when you're talking about wrestlers, is keeping them on the outside, keeping them away from you, and having great power, which is... Let's think about it. When you have great power being undersized at 185 pounds, that power is definitely going to carry you to when you fully are at like your physical peak and fighting at 170 pounds, and you have some physical advantages. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see it too, man. I like it. I would like to see what he does down there at 170. You definitely need fire for the pipe.
I mean, what is fire?
As if you're watching on video and wondering what the hell Paul's smoking out of, that is a genius pipe. which is a unique cooling system for the smoke. Pricey little buggers, but they work pretty decent.
Nice. But, yeah, so I don't know. Maybe 170 is the answer.
As for Brunson, he's going to get a top 5 opponent maybe after
He's
all
calling
this.
out Paulo Costa after the fight.
Go for it. Let's give Derek Brunson some credit here. As they pointed out on the broadcast, though, he has been in the top 10 of the UFC's middleweight division now for, I think they said, 5 straight years, which is an accomplishment. Look, you can criticize it. I see you wanting to, but I said let's give him some credit. It takes a hell of a lot of skill to maintain a top 10 ranking in the UFC for that long. Go ahead, say it. You want to shit on him? I see it.
He's been in the top 10 for 5 years and has never gotten a title shot.
Well, that's because every time he fights the
matters
guy,
too.
Well, look, he was nearing in on a title shot, and who do you run into? Adesanya.
Not really.
I'm not nearing in on a title shot. Well, he had strung some wins together at that point. He had like 4 in a row.
But
I mean, how many do you need?
Like, it's been every time. Every time he gets to the top, he loses. He's lost to Whitaker. He lost to freaking Anderson Silva. He's had some really weird losses.
Well, that Anderson Silva one was. I mean,
Still,
yeah, he lost, but
yeah,
it was
still,
really close.
It was still close enough,
very close,
for a judge to look at it and say, I think fucking Anderson won, you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, he got pretty beat down by Israel Adesanya. And let's just be honest, you really think he can take fucking Paulo Costa's power? I don't. He's been knocked out a lot.
Maybe.
I don't know. I maybe sound like a hater right now, but, like, honestly, I'm sorry. I'm not very impressed by Derek Brunson.
Well, so much for Jared's attempt at giving Derek Brunson a compliment on the show today. That's all right.
I'm not impressed.
Let's.
I thought he was fucking. I think this fight with a different game plan, Kevin Holland wins this fight. I don't think this is a change weight class kind of fight. I think he can still become the 185-pound champ in the future. Like
Holland?
Yeah, 100%.
I can't disagree. I don't think
like
Holland's hurt here.
I think 185 pounds is his weight class because there's so many strikers and there's so many like opportunities to face other strikers. You know what I mean? Like, I'd love to see him versus like a Darren Till versus like, you know, a lot of those guys that.
You're still on that Darren Till train?
Hey, bro, he's fighting Marvin Vettori, who's the consensus #1 contender. If he beats Marvin Vettori, how can you not?
No, if he beats Marvin Vettori, then I'm back into thinking he's doing pretty good. But I mean, the dude's 1 in fucking 4.
Him and Robert Whitaker
1 in
had
3.
an extremely, extremely close fight.
And he got knocked out by George Masvidal.
Yeah, but that was right after Woodley, and like that shit was rough. Then he came out and had a great performance against Gaslam.
Don't get me wrong. It's not that I dislike Darren Till. What I dislike is this weird notion that if he beats Marvin Vettori, he should get a title shot because he won one fight in a row.
I just think at 185, that's kind of everyone at 185 though.
It's not Robert Whitaker. If he wins,
Robert
it'll be
Whitaker,
3 in a row.
Yeah, sure.
Since he fought the champ.
Sure. And that's why everyone is saying he's the consensus #1 contender.
I think if Marvin Vettori wins, it is 5 in a row for him. And I think if he wins, you have to give Vettori the shot, especially since he had such a close fight with Adesanya prior.
Those are the only 2 that have a win streak in the division right now.
Yeah. Then I think those are the only 2 you should be talking about.
Exactly.
And who is the champ talking about?
Darren
Till.
No, but who are the 2 that are fighting the 2 people who have the longest win streaks in the division? So
we'll see.
Darren Till and Kelvin Gaslam. So I think if Kelvin Gaslam or Darren Till wins their next fight, I think that either one of them is getting the title shot. Kelvin Gaslam, although he's had tough times, 2 wins in a row, he beats Robert Whitaker, he's going to get the title shot. Same thing, Darren Till, he's had some rough time.
You can't get a title shot with 1 win in a row. Are you kidding me?
They're giving fucking title shots to people who are losses right now in their last fight.
If Vettori wins, I just don't see Till in the title shot picture. That's
they
all.
gave
I'm not
Yoel
he sucks.
the fucking title fight with 3 straight losses.
And we complained about that every single time, and now he's out of the UFC.
I'm just saying it's not out of the. No. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just telling
keep it
you.
Going.
Sure, it's not right.
That's all I'm saying.
But I'm just saying. That's what they're doing these days. Like, that's just what's happening.
It's some nonsense.
It's just what's happening.
The champ should not even be talking about Darren Till right now. He should be Darren Till to get some fucking wins. He should be talking about Vettori.
That's the problem.
He should be talking about
Gaslam.
Barely. And that was 5. He has 5 in a row with this win.
It was a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm. And he's won 4 in a row since then.
Yeah.
And it was a close fight. It wasn't like he went in there and mopped him up.
Not saying he did. I'm just saying
It was his toughest fight he's had to
handily
date.
beat him in every single round.
That everybody had always talked about. So, Vettori goes in there and beats Till.
I agree.
He's the guy.
But I'm just saying, in that same
Anyway, we got sidetracked.
Yeah,
Let's switch back to the UFC.
But that argument has been brewing for weeks on the text message.
Well, yeah. Brunson, Holland. We're done with that.
Well, here's the thing: is like Brunson is kind of in the title picture, but like I said, like it's 185. It's like everybody's kind of like one fight away from the belt. Like it's weird. They're in a weird spot where everyone's like kind of fought each other and or lost to each other, and everyone's kind of 1 win or 2 wins away from the belt. So I guess Brunson's in that same conversation.
Well, let's move on here too. There's a couple other decent fights on the card.
Yeah.
Max Griffin showed back up again at 170.
Max Payne.
He looked good.
Dude, holy shit.
TKO'd Song, what's his last name? Karan,
I think. I'm sorry. But
he came in there and looked sharp.
Hit him with that 1-2. Pop, pop. Put him to bed.
He's a threat at 170 if he keeps it together.
Yeah,
He's
that's the thing with Max is like he's up and down, but like he shows up when he's not supposed to. You know what I mean? Like everyone was saying this is a real tough fight for him.
Yeah,
and
he smoked that fool. I think
just came out and smoked him. And like same thing like earlier in his career, like the Mike Perry fight, everyone said Mike Perry was gonna smoke him. He handled Mike Perry. Like I don't know. I'm curious to see this new version of Max Griffin because that's now 3 in a row I think for him. So let's see it. Let's see if he can continue it.
I like that Tai Tuivasa fight.
Yeah.
Heavyweight.
Well, I feel like that was the first time I've ever seen that low calf kick ever be utilized like that effectively by a heavyweight.
He fought a guy named Harry Hunsucker at heavyweight. Yeah. And it was a 49-second KO, but it came like
but he hit him with like he
those
just came
calf kicks.
Yeah, straight 6 real hard calf kicks, and dude's leg was shot, and then kind of dropped his hands and worried more about his legs, and then got slept.
I remember watching those. It was, I believe, in my opinion, it was the 4th kick that Tuivasa landed to his calf. That was like that was it.
Nixed it. Yeah.
That's so much power behind there. You don't see that a lot at heavyweight. Like, we're seeing this resurgence of this kick. Like, same thing that took on McGregor. Cejudo suffered a bit too, but then came back. Sean O'Malley fucking taken out by Pedro Munoz. Yeah. But that was...
Justin Gaethje's used it for years. Yeah.
That was a very, very powerful kick, and he just killed that dude's leg and then KO'd him.
Mm-hmm. It was good.
No disrespect to Harry Hunsucker. He's a dude I've never heard of before this. And I think this was the kind of fight Tuivasa needed because he got a little too much on his plate before he was ready with JDS and some of these others.
Well, he's had some better results as of late, and I think
he's raw. He's very raw. I mean, he's a fucking legit street fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
he changed camps.
This is the competition he should be having. It was a good fight.
Yeah.
So
he's fighting. He's training in Dubai now.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he made quick work and used some techniques we haven't seen before.
Yep. And
I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Then it looks like we might have a new contender in Adrian Yanez, who took out Gustavo Lopez in the opening of the main card, I believe.
What weight class was that for the folks?
135.
Bantamweight division is a Shark Tank.
Came out and looked ridiculous. Just like, it was the most calm I've ever seen somebody like look after 2.5 rounds of fighting. He never took a deep breath. He just looked confident. He looked like he had cardio for days, and he was hitting him with select shots. Like he's not the type to go in there and throw a bunch of punches, but every single punch he threw was on target, crisp, and landing.
I agree. He looked really good. Even the commentator team in their typically overblown way were saying like he fought a flawless fight with 0 mistakes, which I don't.
It was pretty close.
It was pretty close, man. It was really impressive.
Yeah.
That's for certain. Very impressive. Interested to see who he gets next in, like I said, the Shark Tank, the bantamweight division.
So I'm saying 135 is like, if you're ranked at 135, you're lucky. like they should have a top 25 at 135, just because it's just a Shark Tank at this point.
Right.
Well, I do think that kind of wraps up our fight night. It had its good moments, but I could see some of the criticisms.
When you compared it to the event the night before, which I just found far more entertaining, was the BKFC 16 card from Biloxi, Mississippi. It's headlined by former MMA fighter Leonard Garcia.
Yeah.
He's former WEC champ. I think he had 20-something fights in the UFC. Pretty famous for being friends with Cowboy, training at the BMF Ranch down there. I don't know if he still trains with Cowboy or not.
I'm sure he does.
But it was an absolutely entertaining night of fights. A few standouts on there. One that I really want to talk about, probably before we get into any of the others, was a fight in there. It's not bantamweight in BKFC.
Yeah.
But it's the 135 pounds. That's the same weight class as what we were just
they
talking
do
about
like
in the
boxing
UFC.
weight classes, right?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have their weight
The UFC is the one that fucked
names.
it all up. Ultimately. The
Yeah.
MMA is the one that fucked it all up. But, yeah, for sure.
That was David Diaz versus Spencer Ruggieri.
Yeah, that was a good fight.
Both of these guys, they got into the BKFC through the open tryout system.
Yeah.
And it was both of their pro combat sports debuts. Like, they're not former MMA fighters. They're not former boxers. They're not like BKFC kind of gets a lot of these older. I don't want to use the term washed out because they're not. They're fresh for BKFC. And they're not washed out. That implies, but they're just older vets
they're just
of
not
other combat
title
sports.
Contenders in MMA anymore.
Right.
Is ultimately what happens.
But BKFC is literally a new sport. That's not just a hype saying. It's a new type of combat sport that is evolving as we watch it. You know, when we were watching some of these fights, we discussed that. You know, that you can actually see progression.
Just like the early days
lot.
of the UFC. There's a lot of guys who mix results over other sports that transfer over to the UFC and wanted to find new success.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing you're seeing in BKFC. A lot of right now it's a lot of the older guys who are moving on from other Bellator, One, all these other different organizations, even boxing. But as it becomes more and more popular and becomes to continue its way on down its path, you're going to see guys come in who are going to be training just bare knuckle, like we kind of saw in these two.
Right, and hey, let's put a pin in those two for a second, and let's follow on with what you were saying. The fight before that with Elven Burrito versus Brad Kelly. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about a little bit of evolution happening in a fight. You had Burrito, who prior, in the pre-fight talks, was talking about how he's 2-2 in BKFC, which is a lot of experience at this point. Yeah. And he's going to be adopting a style where he keeps his hands down purposefully because he thinks that's going to help him land punches at different angles. Yeah. Okay, versus the guy that he was fighting, Brad Kelly, who said that he was going to be implementing a different strategy where he was going to be actually trying to physically block a lot more punches with his elbows and the lower part of his arm. You saw it in the fight.
His freaking elbows were freaking blood red because he's catching them on his elbows.
Which in both guys were successful doing the strategies that they said they wanted to implement, which are new to BKFC. Like, yes, people fought with their hands down. They've usually gotten their clock cleaned. Yeah. And a lot of what people say about BKFC is you can't actually, shell up like you can in boxing. So, yeah, what you said is very true. Kelly wound up getting just his forearms just battered. Yeah. But you had Burrito actually get a lot of success keeping his hands down. But you could tell that he was a very experienced fighter because even when he would miss, he'd fire a shot from his waist and he would miss. But then his hand would go right the fuck back up to his chin most of the time, and then he'd drop it back down.
Well, someone I would compare it to is kind of like Dat Win. Dat Win, he does a lot of that. He does a lot of the, parrying, moving around, catching punches on the back of his hand, stuff like that, which it seems effective.
It does. Kelly used that strategy a little bit too. It almost looked like he was parrying a blow with like an MMA hammer fist right down and knocking incoming punches away, which these are strategies you couldn't possibly use in boxing or in MMA. Like, because you'd be leaving yourself open for other stuff.
Shit,
so it's really fun to me to see these guys implement these new strategies and see how they work out. Now, Burrito winds up winning a majority decision in that fight. But now let's circle back to the Brad Kelly. I'm sorry, the David Diaz versus Spencer Ruggieri fight, because that's my favorite fight of the card.
Yeah, it was pretty freaking
I mean, we watched it earlier, so you could see that fight. And it was a 5-round decision. Both guys making their debut. Wound up being a decision for Diaz after a point was deducted for a backhand blow from Spencer Ruggieri in the 5th round.
Yeah. I think for Ruggieri, I think he looked a little bit better. If you look like just at the fight overall, his shots were a little bit more picked. He was able to knock him down in the 2nd round. I think ultimately what it came down to is being newer into the sport and knowing the rules. Not the rules, but you know what I'm saying. Like he kept having this tendency to where he'd get in these flurries and he'd turn around.
Yeah, he had a bit of a taekwondo background, and he would kind of spin away a couple times, which you can't do. Like MMA is a 360-degree sport.
Yeah.
You know, whereas bare knuckle boxing is a 180-degree sport. Like you can't turn around. It's not actually allowed to. You can't turn your back to an opponent.
Yeah.
And you certainly can't hit anybody on the back.
Yeah.
And he did that a couple times and got some warnings. And clearly, you can't backhand.
Yeah.
I agree with you. He was the more polished
of
of the 2 strikers.
Yeah.
But Diaz, who just incidentally, this is 135 pounds. This is a guy that in 2019 was weighing 215.
Yeah.
And was not into combat sports. And
Yeah.
he turned himself around with fighting, wound up training with Joey Beltran, the heavyweight champ. And yes, he was raw. He threw a lot of side-to-side, hooks.
Yeah.
But dear God, have you seen more heart in 2 fucking fighters?
Yeah, it was a good fight.
I mean,
I think ultimately what happened to Diaz too was in the first 3 rounds he came out probably first 2 rounds he came out really really like pumped up.
So
I felt like after the 2nd round he kind of had a little bit of adrenaline dump, because after the 2nd round is when you kind of saw. Well, in the 2nd round is when Ruggieri started taking over, and past the 2nd round is kind of when I thought the fight was starting to go his way. And then you saw Diaz in the 3rd and 4th kind of take a break, but in the 4th at the end pick it up, and then I thought he won the 5th. So I think it was a close fight. The 1 point definitely ends up. I thought it kind of could have been a draw.
I've seen that fight twice now. I saw it live, and then I watched it back with you earlier, and both times I was like, this is a draw to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't really see a winner here, and I'm not mad about it because those guys gave their friggin' all.
Yeah, for sure.
At one point they were so tired, it was like one guy would throw a punch and then he just had to drop his hands.
Yeah, it was.
And then they'd stare at each other a second, and then another guy would throw a punch and the guy would just take it. It was like they'd fight back in the day where you just stand there and trade blows, and whoever went down
like a
went
Rocky
down.
movie.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a good fight.
I really enjoyed it, and it's not available yet because BKFC 16 just happened while we're recording this. But in the future, that will be available. They break their fights down. It's going to be available on the BKFC app, which, again, this is not a paid endorsement. It's freaking $4 a month. Yeah. Like, you should get it. If you like fighting, BKFC app. So you could watch BKFC 16 for, the $4 a month, $1 a week. You get the fight library. Go back and watch it. It might even show up on YouTube in another couple weeks. Yeah, David Diaz, Spencer Ruggieri, good stuff. The rest of the card had a lot of highlights. I mean, we're not going to talk about every single fight. But we saw Melvin Guillard of MMA fame was on this card as well, and he was looking really good. He's fighting at 185 pounds, which is up quite a bit. Said he wasn't cutting any weight. Okay. And he fought a guy named Scott O'Shaughnessy. And both these guys got a bit of bare-knuckle experience. Of course, Melvin Guillard has got a
litany of MMA experience as well.
He looked like healthy. Like, if you follow Guillard at all, he's had a lot of ups and downs. Yeah. And he's had some problems like everybody does. And I'm not going to drag him up right now. Yeah. But the dude looked healthy and in great shape. And I'm highlighting this because of what happened was just, man, we talk about bad reffing in the UFC. Yeah. I think this might have been more of a mistake just due to this still being a new sport. But in bare knuckle, for those of you listening, that when the ropes can't hold you up, like from a knockdown. Yeah. And so the round opens and they're trading a lot of blows. Guillard knocks O'Shaughnessy back into the ropes. It should have been a knockdown. Like, clearly the ropes held him up, but the ref doesn't call anything. And then about 10 seconds later, a right hand drops Guillard back into the ropes as well. Now, they're not, for those of you that have never seen it, they're not exactly like boxing ropes. It's like a circle.
Yeah, it's like a UFC cage, but with just ropes.
But with ropes, and they're reinforced a little bit. They're not standard boxing ropes. Yeah. They're harder. They're not just steel.
It's like a cage, kind of.
Yeah, it's this weird hybrid thing.
Yeah.
So Goulart kind of gets stuck in this crouched position with like his hips and his butt kind of in the bottom in between the two ropes.
So you got to sit on it.
And he's a downed opponent. Like that's a knockdown. It's time for the ref to stop it, call the knockdown, whatever. And he gets up. Instead, the ref allows O'Shaughnessy to just come in and land like 6 blows to Goulart's dome. Jesus. And then the ref comes in and waves it off as a TKO victory.
Jesus.
So, I mean, he literally allowed 6 punches to a downed opponent and then called it a TKO.
That's right.
And that was that. And, of course, Goulart pops up. The announcers are shocked.
Yeah.
Like, you got Chris Lytle, who's one of the most, in at least public at least, politest people I've ever seen for former fighters. Like, this dude is really diplomatic in what he says. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I hate to say this, but this is a terrible, terrible thing that just happened.
Yeah, for real.
It might even get turned over to a no contest upon further review. But that's what happened.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
It was a bummer because Goulart, man, he was looking really good, man. Yeah, he got knocked down. But he knocked old boy down prior to that. It was a great fight. He looked healthy. Like, that kid still has – he's not a kid anymore, but the young assassin's kind of the old assassin these days. But that stood out just for an incredible, incredible mistake by a referee on what promised to be a pretty exciting fight.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah,
that was a bit of a bummer. Let's just bounce up to the main event. You know, we had Leonard Garcia showing up against Joe Elmore, and it's 165 pounds.
Okay.
Which I'm going to say is a good weight for both those guys. Mm-hmm. Garcia looked in tremendous shape.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked really good. And he showcased a chin that was just unbelievable. It was a unanimous decision that Leonard wins. He retires from combat sports and BKFC, everything afterwards. Went out on a real high note.
Yeah, sounds like it. Good
he had
for
an
him.
Iron chin. He just kept coming forward. I mean, Joe Elmore did what Joe Elmore does, which is throw heavy punches and look pretty good doing it.
Yeah.
But he was like the Terminator, man.
Yeah.
Fucking Leonard Garcia just came forward, ate him, and just beat him up.
That's what's
classic style. It was a really impressive performance.
Yeah.
And he goes off into the sunset now on a great performance and a good win.
That's the way to go. That's how a lot of people want to go. You know?
Yeah, especially since he left the UFC and you know, kind of you hate to say a sour note, but you end on losing streaks.
Yeah.
And you didn't kind of get the heights that you wanted to get. You know, he came in as a WEC champ, or the former WEC champ. Mm-hmm. And always a fun fighter.
Yeah.
That was a tremendous main event. And the rest of the fights on that card, Paul, that you perhaps didn't see, or I know you didn't see, they were excellent. BKFC is really doing fun stuff. I think they're going to continue to grow. They're talking about possibly signing Junior Dos Santos.
That'd be cool.
And if the promotions that Dos Santos listed that he was interested in, I will just make note that the very first one he says was BKFC.
There you go.
So, and they said they're interested in Overeem as well, although David Feldman, the president, is pretty realistic in saying he doesn't think that he's going to get them both.
Yeah.
But he said they're going to make a strong play towards one.
That's dope.
The next BKFC event's going to be in April. It's a heavyweight title eliminator. We'll discuss more of that as that gets closer. But the winner of the next one is going to face the heavyweight champ, Joey Beltran.
Where?
And, one other notable fight, actually, I do want to talk about. Reggie Barnett defeated DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley, who is former boxer, world champion, 86 pro fights, went 12 rounds with Floyd.
Okay.
Title holder. He is, outside of Paulie Malignaggi, the most decorated boxer to ever come into bare knuckle.
Yeah.
He's a little bit older. He's 46. Reggie Barnett, going into this, was 5-1 in bare knuckle, which, again, everybody, this is new. It's their 16th event. That's the best record going in.
And he only lost to
Johnny Bedford.
Johnny Bedford, yeah.
Who is the former champ, that win, having just beat him for the title.
Yeah.
Barnett goes out and wins there's a corner stoppage after the third round, so at the start of round 4.
Okay.
And DeMarcus went out and tried to do what boxers do, like Malignaggi did, which was stay on the outside and jab and do shit. And Barnett knew he was going to do that. He immediately rushed. When they towed the line, he rushed right into him, got him in a clinch, and just started punching him from a clinch.
Yeah.
Ref would come in and break it up when the punches stopped, and he bull rush him again, get him in a clinch. I mean, he did exactly what you're supposed to do to win a bare knuckle fight against a highly decorated boxer, and he did it. After 3 rounds,
didn't want it anymore.
Nah. I mean, I was a little disappointed because he wasn't even injured. He just couldn't handle it anymore. He was like, he knew he was losing.
Yeah.
He couldn't stop him from coming in. He couldn't get punches off in the clinch. And he just kind of gave up and quit.
I feel it. Just didn't see any
Path to victory and was like, screw it. And
at that age, it makes sense, though.
That puts Reggie Barnett now at 135 pounds and bare knuckle at 6-1, which is the best record across the sport right now, calling out that win for a title shot.
Okay.
And when Bedford Win fell out the first time at the end of 2020, of course, he was the fill-in fighter. It was that win versus Reggie Barnett, but then that fell through as well. Then it wound up just getting canceled, and the original title fight was scheduled, whereupon Datwin won the title. Interesting to see if BKFC goes with the rematch between Bedford, which was what we kind of all thought was going to happen, right? Because that was awesome, right? What did you think of that Bedford Win fight?
I thought Win obviously won the fight, but I think it was a great fight.
I wouldn't have any problem seeing that again.
Nah, not at all.
But now you've got Barnett making a pretty good statement. I mean,
maybe make Barnett and Bedford rematch before.
That would be interesting.
Make a title eliminator.
Mm-hmm. So all in all, I can't recommend BKFC more. I tell this to all my friends. I'm like, just get the fucking app. It's $4, man. It's $1 a week.
Yeah.
You're going to get the events. You know, we got the Paige Van Zandt one that was a $40 pay-per-view was included. Mm-hmm. It's good stuff. So,
and if you actually got that pay-per-view, they got you because you just paid $40 to have their thing for the whole year. So
right, you could have.
You already have it, and you don't even know.
Yeah. So that rounds out our BKFC stuff. Great stuff from the Bare Knuckle crew. Rounds out the past UFC, and that just leaves the big one, which is...
Well, also, I actually did want to get into a couple announced fights before we do. So this past week, we had Dana White have an interview with Bro Okamoto where he announced some pretty big news that obviously Khabib Nurmagomedov is officially retired. He's done trying to make him come out of retirement. His belt is being stripped, and now for the vacant title at UFC 262, Michael Chandler will fight Charles Oliveira.
Not the fight that most people were thinking, but let's put a plug in that for a second. Thank God it's over.
Yeah.
Paul.
It's over.
This farce that Dana White has been running. Mm-hmm. You know, Khabib came out later and said to ESPN that he never once was even close to considering coming back for any reason whatsoever. It's been exact the same. He said it in other interviews. This is all Dana White's nonsense. And it's over.
Yeah.
So
29-0.
It's an odd choice for the title fight because you have Dustin Poirier, who everybody thinks should be fighting for that title. But the reason for that is
Justin
because
Gaethje too.
The reason for this is Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor are running it back. They're just setting a date. The fight's been agreed to as tentatively as you can agree it to. Yeah. And now they're looking at July for that fight. And I feel that, and that's from what I understand, I mean, of course, McGregor wants the rematch. McGregor always wants the immediate rematch on the loss. But Poirier, I just feel that he wants to strike while that iron is hot. I think he made more money off of this than he ever did. And I don't blame him. I know we talked about this before. You clearly don't like it. But I'll just say I don't have any problem with it. If you feel like you're the best, then you can go beat Conor. Because if he beats Conor again, let's face it, Conor's career is pretty much over in the MMA world as far as a fucking contender. Okay, especially if he beats him emphatically. Yeah. And it'll send Dustin Poirier's bank account into a very nice place once again, while Conor still has some level of star power. Yeah. And then he can go face the winner of Chandler and fucking Oliveira for the title. Because he says that he was offered that title fight and he turned it down so he could face Conor a third time. And for me, that makes sense. If you're looking at your bank account, which he's a prize fighter, the belt's not going anywhere. Conor is going somewhere, especially if you're one of the camp that believes Conor's on a downswing here.
Here's my rebuttal to that, though. If you're Dustin Poirier, why don't you give that fight even more juice, win the title, and then go rematch him for the title? You know what I'm saying?
I have the answer. I know exactly why.
Why is that?
Because let's say That's what they do. Who they're going to match Conor with is likely to be Nate Diaz, okay? Mm-hmm. What if Conor loses to Nate Diaz?
No. I'm saying put Conor on ice until Dustin.
Conor don't want to be on ice. That Conor will fight Nate Diaz. And if Dustin Poirier believes that Nate Diaz is going to beat Conor, then the Dustin Poirier 3 thing that we all think will always be there ain't going to be there.
Yeah, true.
It's gone. Why? Conor's pretty much done, and his chance at another fucking big payday like this is gone.
Let's just be honest. As much as Conor doesn't want to be on ice, Conor is the kind of fighter that sometimes you have to forcibly put on ice to create bigger hype. That's just
I don't know. I
is.
don't think so anymore. I think he needs to get in and do it. Like, all Conor will talk about is how often he wants to fight. He's not going to fucking take it. Like, he'll go fight. He'll find some other way to force it.
You know what I'm saying, though?
I think that's what Poirier's doing. He's striking while the iron is hot. And this is only if you believe Conor is on the downswing. Yeah. You know what I mean? And, of course, Poirier, he smoked him. He's going to believe he can smoke him again and put the nail in the coffin.
I don't think he smoked him at all. I think that was pretty competitive, and it went one way and then went the other way all the way.
Dude, Conor was left on the mat looking dumbfounded.
For sure. But even Dustin Poirier said on Joe Rogan's podcast that in the first round, when he was rocked, if Conor would have stepped on the gas, he probably could have finished him.
Yeah, but he didn't.
True.
Instead,
I'm just saying for the argument of this rematch, like, it's not just a given that he's going to go out there and smoke him, though. Let's just.
I didn't say it was. I said it is if you're Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
He wouldn't want to fight him. Really?
Oh, I don't. If I'm Dustin Poirier, I'm
not saying he's not looking at him. I'm saying if he didn't think he could beat Conor again, he wouldn't fight him.
I get what you're
saying. He'd go take that title shot.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying is, it is not just something that he should have in his head that he thinks he's just going to go smoke him, because that is.
I didn't say he did.
I just don't think that's a competitive fight every single time it happens. Even with a knockout, it doesn't matter. That was still a competitive fight. Like, it was for as long as it lasted.
I never really thought it. And I'm a huge fan. I fucking love Conor McGregor, but I was like, I didn't like his flat-footedness. Yeah. I didn't like his strike selection. I didn't like his lack of kicks. I didn't like any of it.
I feel
then he
you.
got knocked the fuck out. So
I feel you, but I'm just saying it was a lot closer than Dustin Poirier has his number now.
I didn't say he necessarily had his number. I'm saying if you're Dustin, you're taking that fight now because you think you can win it, and it's your best payday. And it's a payday that's not. This isn't 5 years ago, 3 years ago. This is Conor that might not be there if he loses another fight.
Yeah, true. I agree with you there. All right, well, now let's look at it on the other side of the spectrum as well. There's another man who was also left out of this conversation. And that's Justin Gaethje, who proceeded to, directly after the news, put out a statement that he was offered this fight on May 15th, agreed to the fight, and was headed to the gym to go work out when he found out that he didn't get the fight.
You mean Ali didn't work as magic? That's weird.
But you know what I'm saying?
Can.
So now when you look at Justin's side of the spectrum, he's another one that you look at and say, if we are truly looking at this with Khabib out of the picture,
which he finally is,
yeah, then the loss to Khabib really doesn't hurt his stock that much. Let's just be honest. He beat Tony Ferguson. He beat a lot of these guys in the division and put on some of his greatest performances of his career. Ultimately falls short against Khabib. It is what it is. But I don't think that means he should just be left out of this. Like, this is what sucks about where we're at lightweight. Is, that whole Conor Dustin thing is cool, but it is causing serious roadblocks because, like,
really, Gaethje could have taken another fight. He lost back in October. He should get a title shot off a loss. I mean, admittedly, I see your argument. I'm just saying the UFC has taken two guys that are coming off of a win and matching them up for a title. I see their line of thinking. My problem with it is it's just not consistent.
Yeah, it's not.
But
like, let's just be honest.
So it's hard.
That logic made sense in our last argument and doesn't make. You know what I mean?
Right. This is the very thing I was complaining about before when they're talking about giving Darren Till a fucking title shot.
Yeah. And like it's just the reality of it though is Justin Gaethje deserves some kind of title eliminator or something now. Like, if you take that Khabib fight out of the equation,
he's going Nate Diaz if he wants it.
I guess
Diaz ain't likely to take it though.
Kevin Lee coming back soon?
Not that I've heard.
He's still dealing with some injuries. Yeah, it's just like weird because now I feel like Justin Gaethje's kind of the odd man out.
I mean, I don't feel bad for him because he's just coming out. He just had a title shot in October.
Yeah.
It's not like he's like fucked over for a title shot. Like you just had it, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, and he'll
Well,
probably
that's
get
the
another
thing
one like
is-
really fast. I mean, I imagine one.
I
victory,
wonder where it
he
broke
gets a
down
title
though,
shot.
because everything we have heard from every source was Chandler versus Gaethje was the next fight. Everywhere said that, and I wonder where maybe Poirier turning down the title fight made Oliveira made him the next.
Something behind the scenes we don't know killed it off, and they gave it
Yeah.
to Oliveira, who's I don't know, whatever. I don't hate that fight.
I don't hate that fight, but I'm sorry.
I think
I'm
it's
just
important who gets the next fight, though.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Without
So-
a doubt, if honestly, this is the biggest gamble Dustin Poirier could ever be making. Let's just be honest. This is a huge, huge gamble for him, because we're talking if he beats Conor and then goes on and wins the belt, that's like legendary shit.
Yeah, it's-
like legendary. Like legendary, like put him up there with the greatest lightweights ever. Like shit, if he were to beat Conor, win 5 in a row, win the title, and be the champion after beating Gaethje and everyone he's beat, like he's up there. Like seriously, at least just at lightweight. Obviously.
Arguably doing the second best against Khabib after Conor, because you guys say
Yeah.
Conor did the best because he's the only
Yeah.
man to ever win a round.
Went
Blah, blah,
around,
blah.
but yeah.
But then Poirier had him in that sub for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how good Khabib is. We're talking about. Well,
I
he
think-
did the best
I
when he
think-
lost.
I think like
But, you know.
Justin and Conor all had like mixedly the best performances against Khabib.
But yeah, it's a big risk by Dustin.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
it's
he's
the
really
highest
betting
stakes
on
he can
himself.
get.
It's the highest
Yeah.
stakes he could get, but it comes with also him possibly losing to Conor and him losing his opportunity to ever really touch the UFC gold. Because let's be honest.
No, I disagree with that analogy, but
Well, no, I'm saying at least for the time being, with all the contenders in this division, it's going to be tough for him to lose a fight to Conor and then not to expect Conor to get a shot, and then we're still
Well, yeah,
talking.
if Conor
Justin
wins, you
Gaethje,
got to
we're
say
still-
Conor gets.
There's all these other. That's what I'm saying. Is like lightweight is such. There's so many variables that losing another fight or losing a fight at lightweight right now is tough.
God, too
That's
bad
why like
that-
Tony Ferguson is like not even in this conversation. And that's what's crazy. Tony Ferguson won 14 fights in a row, 13 fights in a row, lost 2, and now we don't even fucking talk about him.
Well, it's because there's no one to match him up with because he can't
You know
fight
what I'm
Gaethje
saying
again.
though? Like
'cause,
yeah.
I mean,
Let's just be honest though. Like that's lightweight. That could happen very easily to Dustin Poirier if he's not careful.
I bet you if Dustin's smart, he's convinced Conor to make another donation as well.
Yeah, I don't think that really matters though.
I'm sorry, you don't think another $500,000 donation to his
No,
charity
no.
would be an incentive for Dustin Poirier to take the fight?
I get that.
I mean, that's
I
just
get
yes.
that. I'm just saying. I think
My whole
that-
point is he's doing this for
every
his
fight-
personal pocketbook, and if he's smart,
Yeah.
he's also getting another huge donation for his
Yeah.
charity as well.
But like I said, I also believe that fight's always on the table, so that donation's sitting there whenever they
So,
fight.
like I said, I disagree. I think if the fight gets killed off, it's too risky. It's possibly there, but Conor loses, it ain't there no more.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, let's talk about a couple other announced fights because we love talking about McGregor in the lightweight division and Poirier. But what about circling back around to the bantamweights?
We never even said anything about Michael Chandler, and he's fighting for the belt.
Well, we'll be talking about it as it gets closer.
It's coming up. I'm just playing. So we also had a couple of big bantamweight fights that have title implications behind them to get announced back to back. So on May 8th, it's going to be Corey Sandegan versus Tj Dillashaw, which is a fucking hell of a fight.
Lineal champ, returning champ, cheat. Tj Dillashaw busted for EPO against Henry Cejudo, stripped of his title.
Yeah.
2-year suspension, coming back against this very tough, very tall Corey Sandegan. Very
And a
dangerous.
different Corey Sandegan than we've even seen
Yeah,
three
Corey
fights
Sandegan has
ago.
been through a little bit of trials and adversity and bounced
Yeah.
back.
Bounced back in a huge way with 2 devastating knockouts.
Let's be honest, this is MMA. So we have really no idea what Tj Dillashaw might look like right now,
that's
because
true.
his game could have absolutely evolved or it could have gone stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely.
It depends.
2 years off is a long time.
It's a long time, man. And you can add things to your game in 2 years, or you can get rusty. It just, the game could pass you by a little bit. Like people, not to bring up Conor again, but people, his detractors after that last fight are saying that. The game's passed him by a little bit while he stayed stagnant at his gym. However, we've seen other fighters be gone 2 years and come out. Like, look at Brian Ortega. Look like a fucking different fighter after, 18 months off?
Yeah, something like that.
Shit. So, who knows, man?
Well,
we know what Corey Sandhagen's bringing.
Here's what I heard from Corey Sandhagen when he was on the JRE recently. He talked about after that Aljamain fight how in his whole career he's always, looked for the finish, but, worked a lot on his technique and doing a lot of like he said a big inspiration for him when he was younger was Dominic Cruz, and he always tried to emulate his movement, and that was a big thing for him throughout his career and putting on good performances. But he said after the Aljo fight he realized that this game is, you gotta sell it at the same time as you gotta look good. You gotta get the knockout. The knockout is big. He talked about that. He's like, I'm going into every fight now looking to finish every single fight because I know that I'm going to get a title shot if I go viral with some kind of knockout, enough people see me knocking, obviously the Moraes fight and the Frankie Edgar fight pretty much went pretty viral. And, more people are going to watch after those kind of performances. And now it's kind of changed his whole mentality. So I wonder how that ties into how he's going to fight TJ. Is he going to look to put him away? Or is he going to play the game with TJ, which I think could end up... This could go two very different ways. Because I could see this being almost the same thing as the Dillashaw versus Cruz matchup, where both guys were just scoring points all day, scoring points, and over 5 rounds. Whoever outlasts each other wins the fight. Or it could be Sandhagen trying to take TJ's head off. Because Sandhagen, like we just said, he's fought 2 complete different ways in his career.
Well, it's going down May 8th, and we'll definitely talk more about that as it gets closer. Another fight we had in that same division with another former champion who's definitely tied in with Tj Dillashaw is Cody Garbrandt fighting Rob Font on May 22nd. That's another great fight. Rob Font's tough. He's on a streak right now.
He's another one that he's just one win away, one big win. That's 135, man. Everybody's just one big win away from a title shot.
That's my favorite division right now. I change, what I mean? But right now with active divisions, I'm 135. Sure. I'm digging.
What I'm going to say is going to be kind of controversial, but that's why Peter Yan better be careful. He could get fucked here.
There might be a lot of title changes happening rapidly.
Well, and he could end up getting fucked in this situation.
You mean getting passed over?
Yeah, let's just say...
It's possible.
Let's just say that no negotiations or anything like that ends up happening until July. Until... May, until let's say May 9th, the night after this fight. And TJ Dillashaw and or Corey Sandhagen goes out and puts on an undeniable performance where everybody online is calling for them to get a title shot.
And you combine that with the fact
with the distaste of how that put kind of like a black eye on the event.
And it's whatever you think about the after effects of the knee, and whether or not he meant to do it or didn't mean to do it, the technical definition of what happened is he cheated to the point where he lost his title.
Yeah.
Okay? Which technically is the same type of thing that Tj Dillashaw did.
Yeah.
And everybody who's anti-Dillashaw was saying he can't come back and walk into a title shot because he cheated and he lost his title because of it. So there is an argument, and I'm not saying I agree with it at all. I'm just saying there is the argument.
I've seen it a lot online.
That Peter Yan cheated and lost his title and does not therefore deserve an immediate rematch any more than Tj Dillashaw, who's being made to fight Corey Sandhagen now.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to debate that right now because I feel like it's endless because I do see the validity of both sides. And personally, the fan in me would rather see
the rematch.
Yeah. Because Aljo can't. I'm a huge fan of Sterling.
The
He can't
purity,
win the fucking
the
title that
purity
way.
of the sport.
Right.
Yeah.
We've already got it fractured off enough
Yeah.
with Dillashaw being stripped
And then the whole Cejudo thing and like
and Cejudo retiring. Like,
yeah.
fucking, we need to get some legitimacy back to the belt here at
absolutely.
135.
And even his fight against Aldo kind of muddied the waters. You know what I mean? Because like Aldo was ranked 9th in the division and he was ranked 1st, and it was just like it was a strange situation.
So, tying that in with what you just said, yes, Peter Yan better be careful. There's a lot of fucking killers, and he could get passed over here.
Just based off negotiations.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, Aljamain Sterling could be like, I don't feel like fighting this day. Blah, blah, blah.
Somebody could do really good. Aljo could point out exactly what we just said. Look, he cheated. Why do I have to give him a rematch?
Exactly.
Dillashaw cheated, didn't get a rematch.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't
what's
know
gonna
the
happen, and I don't
validity of that argument, but I do see where you're coming from.
I think that would kill him with the fan base, but
it would. But I've seen people do dumber things. You know?
It is just a fact of what could possibly happen. So lots of things going on there. Lots of good announced fights. We've already kind of mentioned it. Kevin Gaslam stepping in for Polo Costa and fighting Robert Whitaker.
Yeah, which would be huge.
Touching that earlier. That's going to be on April 17th. So that's the first one of these coming up.
Yep.
And it kind of rounds out our most exciting announced fights. And then leaves just the Big Daddy fight on the table, which it doesn't get any bigger. It's UFC 260. It is the Heavyweight Championship of the world.
We do have to talk a little bit before we go into that about the unfortunate news that the featherweight title fight is now off of this.
Yeah, we did have three title fights.
Two title fights.
Or two title fights.
Yeah.
Because we had Volkanovski versus Ortega at the featherweights.
But
they had a problem with the virus.
It took last week's card. Took a fight off of last week's card as well. It seems like somebody inside of City Kickboxing's team had COVID, and then so that canceled the Gregor Gillespie Bradley Riddell fight, and then also now has canceled the Volkanovski and Ortega fight because Volkanovski tested positive now.
See, I see it differently, but either way, I mean, for what I've read,
I think they do go
everybody
hand in hand.
got tested before they got here.
Yeah.
And then
But
after 2 days here, they were tested again.
Yeah.
And then they failed. So that would kind of indicate to me that the UFC bubble is where they're having issues, which is something I've been a believer in for a long time. I mean, there's plenty of articles about it as well.
Yeah.
It's not like an original thought.
Yeah.
But either way, the fight's off. But that still leaves, and this is going to get rescheduled.
Mm-hmm.
It still leaves the big draw there, which is Stipe
Probably
Miocic
put on that Houston card
versus Francis Ngannou. And yeah, that might get on that Houston card. Who knows? As well as we've got some other fights on here. We've got Tyron Woodley coming back. We've got Sean O'Malley coming back. Mm-hmm. The rest of the card is hit or miss.
Guys.
But Jessica Penne is coming back. Mm-hmm. Which, if you're a fan of hers, she had some. It's good to see her making money again. I'll just leave it at that. Like she needed to make some money, and she had some contract problems with her shit, and it didn't look like she was going to be able to fight and earn money. It's the whole thing, but she's back, so good for her. Mm-hmm. Paycheck's good.
Let's just kind of start from the bottom then, and let's just point a couple fights out that we like. Then we'll obviously go into the deep dive into the main event. So let's talk a little bit about that Jessica Penne fight. She's fighting Hannah Goldie from the Contender Series. Mm-hmm. She's more of like she's pretty big on like the regional scene out here. She was on
Hannah Goldie.
Yeah, she was. She fought for Extreme Couture, I believe. She's fighting out of there, which is a pretty tough gym.
The gym's making a bit of a comeback. They've got a lot of fighters out.
They're getting a lot of guys onto that Contender Series.
Yeah,
which is good because that they're funneling talent straight in. I think.
Well, what do you think about that fight?
I think Penny's going to come out and hopefully put on a performance.
She needs to. She is. It's a bit of a pick 'em on that. I mean, it's minus 115 a betting line on Goldie, and it's minus 105 on Penny. So it's basically a toss.
Everybody's making money.
Right.
Another Contender Series alum, Common Worthy, is fighting Jamie Malarkey before that as well. See, those are like these kind of fight. Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
Commonworthy is one of those guys that, coming off the Contender Series, has kind of started to make some noise. You know what I mean? And I mean, he's had a couple mixed results, but he's
up and down. But when he's on, Worthy looks good, man.
yeah.
He's a lightweight. He's fighting Malarkey, who is the underdog here, plus 120.
Yeah. I think it's a good fight for him to, kind of keep getting that experience and start building his name. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I see Worthy getting the win likely here, but he's an exciting fighter. I like watching him. A fight I'm very, very interested in.
Me too.
Is our boy Sean O'Malley, right? Again at the 135-pound division, because we're just illustrating our own point here, because we're talking about so many of these fights that are important. But he's coming back after his loss to Chico Vera, and he's fighting Thomas Almeida, who was such a hot prospect, who then fell off.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from him for a minute.
Yeah.
I like the fight. I think it's dangerous, though. O'Malley's a heavy favorite at plus 300. I don't know what to expect here. Almeida is a good fighter.
Almeida's good, but, if Sean is really going to continue, to building himself up, he needs to win this fight. This is a must-win.
He is in a must-win situation for his brand and not his career.
Brand has taken a real hard hit since that Cheeto Vera fight.
Dude, let's be honest. We like Sean here.
Yeah.
We've interacted with him. I've had conversations with the man's dad. Great family. He's a cool fighter.
Yeah.
But we can still talk we can still be honest with criticism. He didn't handle that loss very well.
He didn't handle it
whatsoever.
Very well, no.
I was disappointed in how that went.
Yeah.
He seems to refuse to acknowledge it to the point where
he still says he's defending my undefeated record next weekend or something.
And it's not funny. A lot of people want to hate on Conor as a prime example here. Conor handles losses pretty fucking well.
Yeah, you just go back to the shed and you figure it out.
He doesn't make a lot of excuses.
You lose, you learn.
You lose, you learn.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So I've been disappointed with that with Sean. I'd like to see him come out here and make a statement and get a great win here. But he could have his hands full, man.
Yeah, Thomas Almeida is tough. He's no walk in the park.
Thomas Almeida is a very tough fighter. So I don't know how he's doing right now, but I am interested in that fight for sure. I'm excited to see Sean come back, and I'm definitely rooting for him.
Yeah. And then in the co-main event, we got Vicente Luque taking on Tyron Woodley, which this is a tough fight for Tyron Woodley, man. I'm sorry. I don't know what he's thinking right now.
Vicente Luque is a beast.
He's an animal, and he can take a shot. That's one thing that's why I don't understand this fight, is maybe take a lower level fight than this, because Vicente will take every single one of Tyron's bombs and smile with them. And he's got great jiu-jitsu, and he has great striking on the other side.
Yeah, and he packs a punch, and he goes crazy, and is known for just really
dragging out
wild
wars.
knockdown fights.
Yeah, crazy wars.
The type of thing that when people have been bringing it to Woodley,
he doesn't like it. Yeah,
and he's been looking terrible. That's how he's gotten his ass kicked in his last fights. Three in a row.
3 in a row.
People have brought it to him heavy, and he's shelled up. And
in his last 3 fights, he's won 0 rounds.
Yeah, 15 straight rounds that he's lost, right?
With 3 10-8s.
That's rough. And you're fighting Vicente Luque?
Yeah, he was an animal.
Who's just going to charge at you and unleash bombs?
Well,
really?
I'll tell you what, the sportsbook is definitely not giving Tyron any love at the plus 220.
Dude, I wouldn't bet on him at plus 220.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan of his. I think he was a great champ.
Mm-hmm.
But something's not working. Clearly.
Yeah.
You cannot deny reality. And if he doesn't come out here and get an emphatic win, he might find himself on the cut list.
It could happen, man. It could happen. It's
especially if it's another. This would be as a 3-rounder.
Yeah.
But if he takes another 0-for-3 beatdown.
Oh yeah.
That'll be 18 straight rounds
of
getting beat up, which sounds on the surface, if you haven't been paying attention, that sounds like an outlandish thing to say. That Woodley would lose, possibly be beat down for 18 straight rounds in the UFC. You'd be like, you're crazy.
Sense.
But that could actually happen here.
Could happen, yeah.
I believe that's more likely to happen than a Woodley win. Frankly, we have to look at history here, and it pains me to say that, man. I love that dude. He's been look. He's taken a lot of criticism, but I think he's an outstanding fighter, and I don't know what's happened. I don't know if it's mental. I guess.
Could be. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird because 3 fights ago he was the champion.
Right. That's why it's so hard to.
This just doesn't make any sense.
It's just 15 straight rounds.
The only person I could really compare it to would be like Anderson Silva, but Anderson Silva broke his leg. Like he was never the same after that. Like there's no major injury other than like that hand arthritis thing he had going on, which is why I just don't get it. It's
tough, man. I don't know.
But
I don't even know who I want to win that fight. I mean, I guess I'd rather see Woodley get a statement win, not some
bullshit win.
Bullshit. Like
true.
We'll see.
Well, let's talk about the main event, the championship rematch.
Oh, it's finally
champion Stipe Ngannou.
Let's fucking go. Ngannou. It's finally here, man. Oh, for those of you unaware, we've got Stipe is 20-3. Ngannou is 15-3.
Yeah.
You've got Ngannou coming off of a 4-fight win streak since his loss to Derrick Lewis.
Yep.
So he's beaten Curtis Blades by KO, quick KO. He beat Kane with that amazing uppercut right when Kane was coming in for the takedown.
Yep.
He beat Junior Dos Santos by KO. Yep. And he beat
Rosenstruck.
Yeah, Rosenstruck by KO. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we've got, since the Ngannou fight, you've got the first loss to Daniel Cormier.
And then a couple wins.
Which I almost hate to do it, but I'm just going to, once again, for the bajillionth time on this podcast, point out that loss was predicated by a massive eye poke and then a punch straight to that location. And it was followed up by two. I'm just recapping history. It's not an argument. It happened. It was proven as to be the difference maker with back-to-back wins against Daniel Cormier, who's one of the greatest fighters of all time, by Stipe Miocic. Stipe is the underdog betting once again in this fight, which is surprising to a lot of folks.
I'm not that surprised.
But Stipe doesn't get a lot of respect. I mean, he has successfully defended his title 4 times in his 2 title reigns. He holds the record for the most wins at heavyweight title fights, along with the longest title defending streak in the heavyweight division. He holds the record for Fight Night bonus awards with 9 in the UFC divisions, the most in the UFC division's history. Of course, he's a former Golden Gloves boxing champion and an NCAA division wrestler at Cleveland State. And Francis Ngannou is a hell of a power puncher.
Bro, I'm just going to be honest with you right now. I think Francis is going to win. I know that makes your blood boil.
You can think that. I mean, I just don't see. Okay, so what is Ngannou showed us? That he still has incredible knockout power.
I feel like the odds are stacked because of the size of the cage. That's my argument.
I thought the same thing. We made the same argument with Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, but Daniel Cormier was smaller. It was about wrestling. This is length and punching power. But
you don't think it flips it back? You don't think that we were saying that Daniel Cormier held an advantage because of the smaller cage due to his wrestling versus Stipe's striking, but Stipe's wrestling is extremely high level, and in this case, you've got Ngannou's striking versus Stipe's wrestling. So doesn't that actually hurt Ngannou's striking if it hurts Stipe's striking against Cormier?
Relax. The only difference is Stipe uses his wrestling different than DC uses his wrestling. DC uses his wrestling where he goes for like big power slams and picking people up, whereas Stipe uses his wrestling more to wear people down. And I feel like the difference was when he was in that big cage and in that 5-round fight, Stipe moved a lot and got away from his punches a lot and weared Francis out. I feel like it's going to be a lot harder to move around and wear him out a lot easier in that smaller cage. We're talking 4 feet on every side, right?
Yeah, it's a tiny cage.
It's like 24 feet smaller. Let's just be honest. So a big part of that first fight, if you go back and watch that first round, was Stipe being able to duck, dive, and then reset. Like a big part of that fight was Stipe kept being able to duck, and then whenever they were on their feet, he'd go back to the center and reset. He'd go back, reset, and it made Francis chase him down and chase him down and chase him down. I just feel like that's gonna be much harder in that smaller cage. And I'm not saying like Stipe is not gonna win, like he has no chance to win, and if he does the same game plan, it's not gonna work. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that Francis carries a lot of power, and it's going to be hard to wear a guy out in a much smaller cage, and that guy's going to carry that power for longer than what he carried in that fight before. And on the other side of things, I do think a good amount of life has been taken out of Stipe out of those 3 DC fights. He's lost one of his eyes, basically. He's fucking, I'm telling you, he's been knocked out since then. Like, I do think...
He's been knocked out since then. He
since
had the
he
knockout.
fought Ngannou? Yes,
I
he
thought you
has.
meant since the DC fights.
I was going to say, it's literally
got-
the fight after Ngannou, he was knocked out.
You can't say we can't argue that and move on and then bring that up as a reason
No.
why. Look, this is all the same. My rebuttal to what you just said would simply be, this is the exact same arguments we heard before.
Yeah.
Because this is the exact same scenario as before, and everybody says, well, Ngannou is so much better. And
I don't
I'm
think
not
he's that much
saying
better.
that he's that much better, but I'm saying you base that on 4 fights and about 2 minutes and 30 seconds of cage time.
Yeah.
Where he's knocked out wrestlers. Like, he's done very well.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done anything different than he wasn't doing in the first fucking time when he got up to the title. He's knocking fools out and looking devastating while doing it. In the meantime, so he's had 2 minutes of cage time. Stipe, on the reverse side, has had hard rounds with the best of the best of the best and come out on top. And you think once again, because
Plus and a minus.
Stipe took Francis's punches before. He got hit clean and stood there and came back and punched Francis and took him down and beat him up. And Francis' power hasn't gotten dramatically better. It's the same power. Whereas I completely disagree that Stipe's got life taken out of him by Daniel Cormier. I think Stipe is a smart fighter who's got plenty in him. He's an elite level athlete. He was recruited by National League Baseball. Yeah. He's
a good athlete, but he's also 39 years old.
But that's young for heavyweight, dude. And he's not he doesn't have like
him though. He's got 23 fights.
So there's been nothing in his nothing at all in any of his performances that have indicated that he has in any way been slowing down. In fact, he's gotten better. He just beat Daniel Cormier 2 out of 3 fights, and now you're trying to say he's losing something? Daniel Cormier, everybody says he's the greatest. If Cormier had won those fights, we would be hearing about how he's the best ever, and instead he got shut the fuck down.
No, I agree.
There's nothing to me that says Stipe's on the downswing at all of his career.
I'm not saying he's on the downswing. I'm saying at his age, at 39, those 3 fights have to do something to you. Just like in that Ngannou fight, I think part of that Ngannou fight is part of the reason he lost DC the first time. That Ngannou first fight, he
lost because he couldn't see out of his left eye because Daniel Cormier stuck his fucking thumb in it and then threw a punch 30 seconds afterwards at the same side. Like,
well, he got DC right back.
Like,
in this
you
last
can
fight.
watch it.
He got him back in the last fight. I'll tell you that.
Well, it sucks, doesn't it?
I'm just saying.
I mean,
at his age, bro, I'm telling you,
he's got an average fight time of 11 minutes. It's not like how old is. You could also say that at Francis's age, how much can he actually improve?
I agree. I don't think he's improved that much. I don't think he's improved. I just think he's stayed the same, and he's gotten better on the mental side of it. I don't think he's physically improved at all. I don't really see where people are saying he's like physically improved.
I mean, look
he's
at the
just
hitters.
as good as he was. I just think all I'm saying with Francis is Francis has become more comfortable with being in the bigger fights. Like, if you look at how that fight was built up the first time, he was kind of thrusted into the spotlight. I think losing that fight did a lot for him mentally because...
Really? Because he came out and threw a stinker against Derrick Lewis.
Yeah, of course. And since then, he's recovered from it and moved forward and won 4 in a row. So my point is that sometimes it takes losing those big fights to rebuild yourself and building yourself back into this fight again. I'm curious to see how he handles it. I do think with, like I said, the smaller cage, I think it's going to be harder for Stipe to wear him down. And I think
this ain't Stipe's first time in the cage, and it's not like Francis is the first heavy hitter. I mean, Stipe's record is about as decorated as you can get. And the names that he holds victories over are names when they meant something when it happened.
I feel you.
I mean, like, he beat Gonzaga in 2014 when Gonzaga was still a bit of something. He lost to Junior Dos Santos in 2014, but then he comes back and he beat Dos Santos in 2017 when Dos Santos was still something. Yeah. He had wins over Alistair Overeem in 2016. Fabricio Werdum in 2016. Arlovsky back in 2016. Mark Hunt hit like a goddamn truck. And he TKO'd Mark Hunt in 2016, back when that counted like 5 years ago. You know what I mean? And then he caps it all off with beating the monster that was supposedly Ngannou, right? After avenging his loss to fucking Junior Dos Santos. And then, of course, the Cormier stuff. Like, nothing but steady upward progression, including avenging losses and beating just former champions and killers, not their slightly washed out version you see in 2021. But 5-6 years ago when these were something.
Francis isn't beating people that are washed up, though.
I didn't say we're not talking about Francis.
That's what I thought you were saying.
We're talking about Stipe.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I'm not discounting Stipe in any way. I'm just saying that I think that all the chips are stacked against him in this fight. Let's just, they have made it to where the chips are stacked against him. I think if you put this in a big cage, it's the same thing that happens the first time. You put it in a small cage, it changes things. It's undeniable.
There's no disagreement from me with the small cage being a detriment, I guess, to both men, though. Because I think you can't sit here and say it hurts Stipe but not Ngannou when we try to argue that it benefited Daniel because of his wrestling.
Let's just be honest, though.
Why doesn't it benefit Stipe because of his wrestling?
Because Stipe is not as high level of a wrestler as DC.
Nobody is. DC's.
That's what I'm saying. Ultimately, that's really what.
He's a hell of a lot better wrestler than Francis Ngannou, who has zero fucking wrestling.
Okay, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a good wrestler to not get taken down. Let's just be honest. When you're fucking wrestling guys who are that big, sometimes it just comes down to they're too fucking big to get taken down. He took Francis down in that first fight, but every single time he took Francis, but every time he took Francis down, it took something out of him to take him down too. He didn't beat the shit out of him on top. Let's just be honest. A lot of that fight was kind of like how the Derrick Brunson fight was.
He's not going to gas himself out. 100%.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Smart fighting.
All I'm saying, it is. But what I'm saying is, it takes a lot out of somebody to do that same thing to somebody who is Francis Ngannou's size.
No, I didn't see Stipe tired. I mean, I would agree with you if we saw Stipe getting fucked up because he got tired.
I'm not saying
the one loss he had.
I'm not saying he's
whether you believe
tired.
it affected it or not. The one loss he's had, he was fucking eye poked the shit out of his eye on that fucking side.
Yeah,
that's the one loss he's had since 2014 against Junior Dos Santos.
Yeah, but
he's decimated everybody else in front of him who could also fucking punch and who also brought skills other than that to the table.
Relax with the decimated, because the second fight.
Well, let's look at it.
The second fight.
No, I'm
just talking about the DC fights. I'm not talking about the rest of his career.
No, let's go from the loss right here against Dos Santos. I said he decimated everybody since Dos Santos. TKO, TKO, KO, TKO.
I'm not talking about his whole career.
KO.
Okay, I get that. I'm not talking about his fucking career. Let me explain my point.
Well, I said since Dos Santos, he's decimated everybody in front of him.
But I'm talking about in those 3 DC fights, let's not pretend like he just decimated him. Those fights were all competitive.
So TKO and punches.
The first one. Stop.
A 5-round unanimous decision.
You're
being so
biased right now. Your bias is being ridiculous right now. You cannot tell me in the second fight that wasn't a hell of a. I'm talking about the DC fights. Stop showing me the fucking list. I'm talking about the 3 DC fights. The first one. Competitive, gets knocked out. Second fight.
The one, whatever.
Let me tell my point. The second one, it was completely on DC's side for the first 3 rounds. In the 4th round, he was able to tire DC out and finish him. But the first 3 rounds of that fight, he was getting his ass beat.
He was losing the first 3 rounds, so that means that his KO and winning the fight. I don't understand the point.
I mean, and then in the 3rd fight. Those all were competitive rounds as well.
I haven't said that they weren't. I said that he's decimated every fighter since he lost to Junior Dos Santos.
So, yeah, exactly.
He's KO'd everybody he fought, literally, since Junior Dos Santos, because he has a KO victory against Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, I
so
get
he's
that,
literally,
but
other
those-
than Francis Ngannou
That's
decision.
a biased look at it, though, because if
That's
you
the
look,
factual look of it.
It's not a factual look
Other
at
than
it, though.
Francis Ngannou, he's
Because-
KO'd every single opponent
he's
he's
KO'd
fought.
every opponent, but
since
that
his
does not
one
mean
loss.
that he just walked through him. If you look at the Alistair Overeem fight, he's seconds away from getting finished. Comes
are
back.
heavyweights.
Okay, but he comes back and finishes him. That's not decimating an opponent. That is winning a fight. He has won all his fights handily, but you cannot sit here and say he's decimated the entire division. He's had
I didn't
tough
say
fights.
the entire division.
He's
and
had
I'm sorry,
tough fights.
I think KOs are a decimating victory. When you get knocked the fuck
Not
out.
at heavyweight, where everyone's knocking everyone out. It's heavyweight. Everyone's knocking everyone out.
We can just agree to disagree, because this
How many
argument will just go on
decisions?
forever. You're
How
not going
many
to change.
decisions?
You're not going to change my viewpoint that KO victories are decimating victories. I'm not going to walk back what I said when I look at this list, and he's KO'd every fucking opponent that he's faced. Whether
Then
you want
he
to
got
say
decimated by Daniel Cormier.
the decision law, yes, and he got eye poked and knocked the fuck out in round 1 at 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and he came back and he knocked him out and won a 5-round decision. I've never denied any of that. That doesn't. Yeah. After that, so the 2 losses he's had, he's come back and KO'd both them motherfuckers. The only 2 losses he had in this fucking heavyweight shit, KO'd both of them, but still somehow he fucking
Actually,
sucks.
he's lost 3 in heavyweight, and he was knocked out by Stefan Struve. So
Yeah, in 2012.
I know. I just
And
put that one in there. That one's just too good to put in there, though.
yeah,
But,
I
hey,
mean, yeah.
He's getting to that time in his career, though, dude. I'm telling you. I know you're a huge fan of him, but those fights matter. Those performances matter. He's getting up there in age. He's had wars in his fucking career. You can't sit there and
He's
tell
had
me
wars against Daniel Cormier, everybody
Daniel
else.
Cormier, JDS, the first time when
Look
he
at the
lost
rounds.
the
Look
decision
at the
was a
rounds.
war.
First round KO, first round KO, first round KO, first round
Alistair
KO,
Overeem
first
had
round
him on
KO,
freaking
first round
knockdown,
KO,
too.
third round
Like,
KO.
Oh my lord. Oh my lord.
It's not a war.
It's-
A 2-minute fight that
Okay,
ends in a
but-
KO isn't a war because you took
I'm
a
not
little bit of
saying
damage.
it's a war. I'm saying it
what you
matters
just
on
said.
your chin, though. It does matter for your chin. When you're fighting the hardest puncher in the fucking world, it matters.
And Daniel Cormier couldn't knock him out in the next 2 fucking fights. In the next fucking,
I get
let's
that.
see, 9 rounds he went because he couldn't land the eye poke and to get the punch in afterwards, which I think is proven by the fact that he goes fucking 9 rounds and can't get a KO on Stipe. So how is his chin hurt? Because when he doesn't get poked in the eye, he doesn't get fucking knocked out.
All right, we'll see. We will see.
That's what I'm saying. We have to agree to disagree because you're not going to change your viewpoint
I'm
that
not
Stipe
changing
is
my
on the
viewpoint.
downswing.
He's on the downswing. He's 39
Because-
years old. He's fighting the hardest puncher in the world in a small cage.
He's
Put
not
it in
the
the
hardest
big cage.
puncher in the world.
Yeah, he broke the fucking world record, bro. What are you talking
You
about?
don't seriously believe the hype of
He got a fucking world record. He has
Hold
the
on.
fucking certificate.
you don't the hardest puncher in the world on a Guinness book against a machine where he's got a running start and tags it. That never happens
It's
in a
not a
fist
running
fight.
start. He's standing there and punching it. Watch the video.
You're not talking about the one he did on the UFC in the fucking in the
No, I'm talking
studio
about
on their little machine that went up.
punched the fucking thing that.
I know, and Dana likes to talk about how we got hit by. It's just like if you got hit by a Ford Escort at 35 miles an hour. You know that's bullshit, right?
I know it's not practical.
Because
I know it's not practical, obviously, because there's no
Nobody-
perfect punch in the world.
You
But
realize?
I'm
Wait,
just
let
saying-
me finish. You realize that there's nobody on the planet that can get hit by a Ford Escort at 35 miles an hour and get back up, right?
I can right now.
You
Let's go
understand?
try.
So that's
just kidding.
I know they like to say that.
No,
But
I
what
get it.
you do to a machine on the outside is just as impressive as things like pad work. They
Mm-hmm.
do count for something, but that's not a fist fight.
Yeah. Well, because
So
there's
yes,
just
it's
no
impressive.
perfect
Just like
punch.
shit
yeah.
looked impressive. Like he looks impressive on pads. So Stipe might look impressive on pads. So make him impressive with his
Yeah.
punch. Just like Ronda Rousey could light the pads up.
Yeah, I
She
feel
couldn't
you.
box worth a fuck. He
Yeah.
can hit very, very hard, undeniably. But that hardest puncher in the world shit, really, he hits harder than Derrick Lewis, who holds the KO record. I mean,
I'm curious
and
on
a
that
victory.
because both of them
I mean-
fought so terribly when they fought each other.
That's why I
would
don't
love
believe.
to see that again.
I'm not saying he doesn't punch hard. Clearly,
Yeah.
and yes, he does, but he doesn't. I mean, they were just saying Derrick
Punches
Lewis
pretty
was
hard,
the
though.
hardest puncher when Derrick Lewis's last fight.
Yeah.
It's just Dana
Those
White.
two, I don't know. Between those two, I think those two probably hit the hardest.
I promise you, he does not hit somebody with the force of a Ford Escort or whatever.
Yeah, because there's no perfect punch. There's no,
That's
there's no
absurd.
way that he could hit someone with that. But I'm just saying, you cannot. His power is undeniable.
No, I'm not
It's
saying he's weak.
undeniable.
I'm just saying.
And
Stipe's taking those punches.
He's taking those punches, but
Is it dangerous? Can
we've
he lose?
seen
Of course.
Francis in the small cage
I'd
and
pick him
what
to
he
win.
did with Rosenstrike in the small cage. Like, how do you stop that at that speed? Like,
Stipe's no Rosenstrike. He stopped it the same way he stopped him the first time.
yeah, but in the cage,
I just don't understand this argument. So
like,
the smaller cage has
cage
always
matters.
favored the wrestler, and every time we've brought it up, but somehow in this one it favors the striker. It doesn't make sense. Every time we've discussed this, it's always the striker that is going to be hampered against the wrestler in the smaller cage.
not
So
always.
I guess we'll find out. I guess we're going to find out here. That's
Yeah,
why
we'll
we're going to fucking watch
yeah,
this
we
shit.
gotta see this.
So obviously you're picking Ngannou. Obviously
Yeah.
I'm picking Stipe.
I want.
I mean,
Stipe to
you're on
win.
side of the
I
sports
just-
books, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
I
you're on the
just
side of the
don't
sports
see it.
book.
Yeah,
And the winner gets John Jones.
that's what part we do need to talk a little bit about.
We'll end the show with that.
Yeah. So now, I feel like it's kind of the dark cloud that's gonna loom over the whole fight week. Like, it's gonna be the nonstop questions. It's gonna be all about it. You know, he's gonna be there. He's gonna be in like. It's all
I
gonna
would
be
imagine
about him.
he's going to be there.
Yeah.
I didn't know he's not going to be there.
I bet you he's gonna be how like Khabib was. He's gonna be sitting.
Let's
on the
point out
corner.
one thing while we're talking about this small cage, just real quick. I will give Dana White, who we criticize a lot, some credit. He did try to get this event moved to Texas and have it
Texas
put in a big
yeah,
cage.
yeah.
But he said that the mayors of these cities at that time would not work with him to allow the full capacity crowd, which he was insistent upon. And so they didn't do it because it would have been in a full-size cage if he'd have moved it. So he did try. So there's that effort
I just don't
there.
understand why they can't put the full size cage in there.
Me neither. I'm pretty certain it fits because plenty of room. Anyways,
But yeah, I do think Jones is gonna get he's just gonna be the freaking dark cloud looming over everything. Every question is being asked exactly right after the fight. You know they're gonna be like, and John is next. You know, and whoever wins, whether it be Stipe or Francis, the first thing is gonna be asked of him is John Jones next. You know?
yeah, there'll be no rematch no rubber match for Stipe right away. At least maybe he can
There'll
earn
be
one
no-
in the past, but I don't.
Definitely be no rubber match for a freaking.
Well, he would
anybody,
be down
by the
2-0. I mean, if Stipe
Yeah.
wins, he'll have 2 victories over Ngannou.
I know,
They're
but I'm
not gonna
saying,
give him a
like,
third. But
I feel like the UFC hates him so much that there's no way Stipe gets the rubber match. Like
UFC is so dumb.
they don't like him for some reason. Like that's just what it is. Like I don't know what kind of beef they have, but all I know is if Stipe loses this fight, they're gonna ruin him.
Yeah, it won't be. It'll be Jones versus Ngannou definitely, which is an exciting
Which is
fight.
still a huge fight.
No, I'm not saying Stipe doesn't. I'm gonna make it clear. I do think he's gonna win, and I like to argue back and forth. And
Yeah,
I'm just a personal fan of Stipe Miocic.
yeah I'm
you know,
aware. Just kidding.
If people, you might have noticed if you've ever listened to the show. But I admire him as a human being and as a fighter, and I just I've never understood why the UFC didn't embrace him and turn him into a big star.
Yeah,
I mean, I get it that he mumbles. Yep, and we've also had big stars like Anderson Silva who could barely speak English. What's the difference? I mean,
Yeah, there's
so fucking put the subtitles for his mumbling ass. I mean, who cares? But either way, you're right. I don't really think you can argue the fact they're not on the Stipe train, but
no, they're not.
it is what it is. If he beats Ngannou, I mean, him and Jones is, I find more interesting.
Well, let's just look at it this way. Look how they treated him when he lost to DC the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you got to look at.
Yeah.
You know, that's all you got to look at. They were talking about Brock Lesnar and fucking all kinds of shit.
All kinds of nonsense.
Yeah. Doing everything but the rematch.
Who would you rather see fight John Jones just from that? You know, take winning and losing out of this fight. Would you rather see John Jones versus Ngannou or John Jones versus Stipe?
For the purity of the sport, it's got to be Stipe Jones because if everyone, including yourself, truly believes Stipe is the GOAT, he must take on the light heavyweight GOAT.
Dude, and their shared history with
Like
Cormier.
a legacy, it's a huge legacy fight.
I think that's an amazing fight for both those guys. That's the fight I want as a fan. You take my love of Stipe Miocic out of it. You just
as
look
a
at
legacy fight, that's a big fight.
what they've both accomplished, and then the shared DC bit, and oh man, that's just would be epic, man.
They don't really have a shared DC bit.
No,
John
I mean
beat the fuck out of DC both times.
Right. I'm just saying that like.
But
Everyone looks at DC as like such, and he
equalizer.
is. I talk a lot of shit, but he's this great fighter, and and they were both the only two guys to really beat him down.
Yeah,
you know, and then to have them square off for the heavyweight, the biggest title.
John's looking fucking big too.
Yeah, he is, man. He looks crazy huge.
He's
trimmed down from 252 down to 245.
Yeah,
looks nasty.
Makes a lot more sense for him, I would think. Because one thing you don't want to run into if you're John Jones is your speed to diminish, you know. Especially if Francis makes it out of there. Because Francis has a lot of power, but one thing that's super underrated with Francis is his speed. It's like speed from point A to point B, like how he rushes people in like that. And I feel like one thing that he has actually gotten better at is he's like, you could say, I know you've said that you don't agree with this, but I do think his patience has gotten better.
I think it has too. I mean, look how he handled Kane coming in. I'm not going to disagree. I mean,
like
in all
his
seriousness,
patience, like
shit talking aside,
his ability to strike, like wait for that moment and then explode, is like I don't think we've ever seen somebody that explodes like he does ever in the UFC.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it's nuts.
No, he's extremely dangerous, extremely powerful, very fast. And he's
Fast
seeming
switch.
to be able to recognize wrestlers when they make the mistake of coming in on him from too far out, which is what Kane did. I mean, Blades,
Yeah,
you know, he lands these massive punches and lays them out when they're coming in.
Yep.
It's very impressive. It's going to be an exciting fight. I mean, in all seriousness and shit talking aside, I mean, I don't know who wins this fight. I mean, I hope Stipe does because I'm a fan, but yes, I ultimately I agree. He's got his hands full. Like he could easily get fucking knocked out by
and vice versa. I think Stipe does carry enough power to knock Francis out too.
Yeah, I think his KO ratio would certainly point to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, we've never really seen Francis ever get hurt like that, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It's going to be a monster fight.
Get him
though.
tired.
It doesn't get any bigger than this, as they say.
Yeah.
And we'll have a lot to talk about afterwards because the whole John Jones thing will be on the table. I'm assuming if the UFC's smart, they're going to have a date in mind already and some things ready to announce.
Well, it really just comes down to how the fight goes.
Right.
If it's some quick knockout on either side, then probably run the Jones fight pretty quick. If it's Stipe having to wear Francis out for 5 rounds and wrestle him and take some beating to get some points,
Yeah, it might be
he might
6
take some
months or
more
something.
time.
It might be September before we see it.
Might be even December-ish. Which honestly is ultimately to John's advantage. Just continuing to be able to put that body, because that's one thing that I feel like Izzy had the biggest issue with when he fought Jan was I don't think like he kept talking about how his legs were dead. That just means that like he wasn't used to performing at that level while carrying that weight. So I think that the longer that it takes for this John fight for him for the belt to happen, it's for the better for him because he's going to be able to continue to put that body that he carries around in these high-stress situations. So when he gets into whether it be a Francis or Stipe fight, he's not going to gas. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Me too.
I've been complaining a lot about some of these fights or UFC cards, but this is a great fight here.
Well, and this leads
It's gonna be a
into
good night.
the reintroduction of the crowd. Because you know what I mean? Because we get this is kind of the last pay-per-view we're going to see without a crowd.
And I'm excited about that, too. I mean, that really stood out in this weekend's BKFC event was the crowd screaming and yelling at all the action that was going down. So good things for the UFC ahead, it seems. That wraps the show for today, my friend.
Yep.
If you're tuning in for the first time, you can catch our show wherever you get your podcasts from. We are also on KLVM Radio, on klvmradio.com. You can find that on radio.com and the Orange Radio app as well. All that information is located in one handy spot.
SWATMMA.com, where you can head over there, click the gear button, buy a t-shirt, maybe a jacket, who knows. Support the podcast.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.
Later.